Welcome to Hockey Wiz Talks podcast. Today I'll be previewing the conference finals in the 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs. This is a preview of the conference finals matchups. Eastern Conference matchup. The Eastern Conference finals is between the Florida Panthers and Carolina Hurricanes. Game 1 will be played on Thursday, May 18th at 8 p.m. on TNT and CBC. This was an Eastern Conference matchup that nobody predicted. I think no one predicted that the Florida Panthers would have made the Eastern Conference Finals. But yet, here they are on the cusp of making their first finals appearance since 1996. The Carolina Hurricanes, on the other hand, won the Metropolitan Division and had the second best record in the Eastern Conference behind only the Boston Bruins. They won their first 2 rounds relatively easily, but now they're going to be matched up against a red-hot Florida Panthers team and a goalie in Sergei Bobrovsky, who has really come into his own and has been playing his best hockey of late. The Carolina Hurricanes have won their division 3 years running and will appear in the conference finals for the first time since Brind'Amour's rookie season behind the bench. The Canes seem to have shed their underachieving reputation and silenced the suggestions that they are playoff chokers. After cruising past the New York Islanders in the first round and demolishing the New Jersey Devils in 5 games, all that's left is to blast through the wild-card Florida Panthers to advance to the Stanley Cup Finals. Florida is no easy task though. The Florida Panthers already have dispatched 2 of the top seeds in the Eastern Conference in the Boston Bruins, who won the President's Trophy, and the Toronto Maple Leafs, who were Stanley Cup favorites at the beginning of the year. Matthew Tkachuk is playing some of his best hockey and has become their spiritual captain in the locker room, whereas Sergei Bobrovsky has put the team on his back and has been stealing game after game. The top 5 scorers for each team are Sebastian Aho and Jordan Martinook, who both have 10 points apiece, Jesper Fast, Seth Jarvis, and Brent Burns, who all have 8 points apiece. For Florida, Matthew Tkachuk leads them in points with 16, Carter Verhaeghe with 12, Brandon Montour and Alexander Barkov with 9, and Sam Reinhart with 8. The X factor for this series will really be which Sergei Bobrovsky shows up. If it's the Bobrovsky from the regular season, then Carolina will win easily. But if it's the Bobrovsky that has carried the Florida Panthers in the playoffs, then Florida stands a very good shot. For Carolina, the X factor is Jordan Martinook, who I highlighted earlier, who is tied with Sebastian Aho for the team lead in points with 10. While it is expected for him to come down to earth at some point, it should be noted that his contribution this postseason has been outstanding. Both teams can get offensive production from the back end, with defensemen like Brent Burns, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, and Jacob Slavin for Carolina, Aaron Ekblad, Brandon Montour, and Gustav Forsling for Florida. These players are rovers and will jump into the attack anytime they get a chance to. Besides contributing offensively, Carolina also has some of the most steady defensemen in the league. Most notably Jacob Slavin, who also happens to be one of the best defensive defensemen in the league. Aaron Ekblad, who had a down year offensively, has transitioned into becoming a more shutdown-oriented defenseman and plays heavy minutes against other teams' top lines. If Florida is to win this series, he will have to do a good job against their top players. If Florida is to win this series, Ekblad will have to do a good job against Sebastian Aho. Florida obviously has an advantage in the goaltending department with Bobrovsky in net, but Carolina also has some solid goalies in Frederik Andersen and Antti Raanta. Carolina has proven that they have faith in both of these goalies, but against this Florida Panthers team, a tandem will not get the job done because Carolina's goalie not only has to play well, but they have to match Sergei Bobrovsky at the other end. On paper, Carolina is a better team. However, the momentum of the Florida Panthers is much greater, having defeated both Boston and Toronto. And out of all the remaining teams left in the playoffs, Florida had by far the toughest schedule. Carolina Hurricanes win if they can get consistent offensive production from all of their players and defensemen, play sound defensively, and get solid goaltending. Florida Panthers win if Matthew Tkachuk continues his hot play, Alexander Barkov is a factor, and Sergei Bobrovsky is a wall in net. And now a word from our sponsor. Check out my scouting blog at hockeywiz777scouting.com. Listen to my scouting blog podcast on podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/hockeywiz777scouting. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at HockeyWiz777. Western Conference matchup. The Western Conference Finals is between the Dallas Stars and Vegas Golden Knights. Game 1 will be played at 8:30 p.m. on ESPN. The Vegas Golden Knights won the Pacific Division, cruised past the Winnipeg Jets in 5 games, and beat the Edmonton Oilers in 6 games to advance to the Western Conference Finals to meet the Dallas Stars. Whereas the Dallas Stars won the Central Division, won their first round matchup against the Minnesota Wild in 6 games, their second round matchup against the Seattle Kraken in 7 games to face Vegas in the conference finals. The Dallas Stars and Vegas Golden Knights are back at it again, playing a best-of-7 series for the right to play for the Stanley Cup. They met each other in 2020 in the COVID bubble in Edmonton, where Dallas ended up winning the series in 5 games before losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Stanley Cup Finals. 21 players and 5 coaches were involved in that series are going to be part of this one too, including Dallas coach Peter DeBoer, who was the coach of the Golden Knights back then. Vegas assistant John Stevens was an assistant for the Dallas Stars back in 2020. DeBoer was fired by the Golden Knights a year ago Tuesday and hired by the Stars on June 21st, 2022. Stevens was let go by the Stars on May 20th, 2022 and hired by Vegas on June 28th. So there definitely is extra personal motivation in this series. The game breakers in this series for Vegas are Mark Stone and Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel, who was brought over in a blockbuster trade from Buffalo, has been as advertised. He seems to be finally getting comfortable in the playoffs as he leads the Golden Knights with 14 points this postseason and is tied for the team lead in goals with Chandler Stevenson, who also has 6. Mark Stone may not be putting up as many points as Jack Eichel, but he's also playing very well. But he's playing well on both sides of the puck, and he's chipping in offensively, and is a great leader in the locker room. At 38 years old, Joe Pavelski is still getting the job done for the Dallas Stars, and is probably their best player. The forward enters the conference finals on a goal-per-game pace, 8 in 8 games, including 3 game-winning goals, tied for the most in the playoffs with Florida Panthers forward Carter Verhaeghe. The other Dallas Stars forward to watch out for is Roope Hintz, who has the team lead in points this postseason. The X factors in this series for the Vegas Golden Knights is William Karlsson, coming off a series where he had to go against Connor McDavid and would be matched up against the other team's best player. It's safe to say that he relishes being matched up against top players and has done a mighty good job of doing that. Look for him and his line mates Riley Smith and Nikolai Waugh to match up against the Stars' top line of Joe Pavelski, Roope Hintz, and Jason Robertson. Before I mentioned Roope Hintz is an X factor as he has 19 points. The X factor for the Dallas Stars is Jason Robertson. Normally I would say that he's a game breaker, but because Roope Hintz is playing so well, he's actually been their best forward other than Joe Pavelski. So that would make Jason Robertson their X factor, because if Jason Robertson plays well, that gives the Dallas Stars a supreme advantage. It seems like Adin Hill is going to be the starter in net for the Vegas Golden Knights, after taking over in goal for Laurent Brossoit, who suffered a lower body injury against Edmonton. He did a pretty good job in net. However, he's going to face a tall task, as he's going to be facing Jake Ottinger at the other end, who is an elite goalie, coming off statistically his worst playoff series in his career. Speaking of Jake Ottinger, he had a tough series against the Kraken, but he pulled through in Game 7 as he made 22 saves to pull out a 2-1 victory. Ottinger is 8-5 with a 2.75 GAA and a .903 save percentage in 13 games this postseason. Some numbers to know before the series starts. Head coach Pete DeBoer of the Dallas Stars is in the 3rd round of the playoffs for the 5th time with 4 teams in his NHL coaching career. He is the only coach in NHL history to lead his team into the 3rd round in his first season with a team on 4 separate occasions. The Golden Knights are the 3rd team in NHL history to advance to the round before the Stanley Cup Finals, at least 4 times in their first 6 seasons, joining the New York Rangers and St. Louis Blues. Golden Knights win if they stick to their formula that got them here, which is stay out of the penalty box and control play at 5-on-5. Dallas Stars win if they can sustain their forecheck early, get offensive production from everyone in the lineup, and Jake Ottinger is stellar in net. Check out my hockey blog at hockeywithtalkshockey.blogspot.com. Listen to Hockey With Talks podcast on Podbean and Spotify. Check out my travel channel at youtube.com/@hockeywithtravels. For my Eastern Conference Finals matchup, I have Florida beating Carolina in 7 games. And in my Western Conference Finals matchup, I have Dallas beating Vegas in 5 games. My next podcast will be an update on the conference finals.